George. Johnny. Here we go. Here we go.
That's a huge pass.
Great hands.
Whoa, could have just swooped in.
What a sight.
24 teams ready to go all out.
Hello, I am Nick Polivino.
I'm Felix Bornholt.
We are composers here at Rumble Studios. We're going to have a look at the Rugby World Cup 2027 session. We'll have a little in-depth look, some of the choices we made. Let's talk about the brief.
Monstrously big brief. A huge rock track mixed with like a massive cinematic orchestral score, kind of like a Pirates of the Caribbean thing. They really loved all these rock opera elements, Queen, pure opera elements, like a choir, basically, to run throughout the whole spot. And it wasn't like pick a direction, it was we want all of these in the one spot. Huge orchestral score, rock guitars, drums, and we also want this massive choir.
They wanted to have all the nations that take part in the Rugby World Cup be represented sonically. That's all really, really tightly scored to picture. Overall, the brief is, it's extremely eclectic and there's a lot to fit in, really.
In 60 seconds.
In 60 seconds, exactly. Let's have a look.
We'll show you how we did it. Give you a quick overview of how we've structured the session. Everything's divided into a few different buses. We've got an instrument bus at the bottom, and this has got everything that's in the underbed, so the orchestra, the drums, the guitars, some percussion. Then above that, there's the spots bus, which has got all these spot effects and spot melodies that we'll look at shortly. And above that, it's a bunch of vocal buses. Heaps of vocals on this, choir, individual opera singers, some of us on it, a lot of vocal tracks. So that's kind of how the session is structured.
Let's have a little look at the instrument bus. A cool thing about this is that we got to record the Prague Philharmonic Orchestra.
Even though we were scoring everything in MIDI, we were keeping that in mind. Let's have a look at some of these stems first. Basically, we wrote all the string and brass parts out in MIDI first, scored with, it's like a bunch of Spitfire audio plugins.
Some Crow Hill.
Crow Hill, the glass strings, we use heaps. We scored all that out, and then as soon as those parts were locked in to a locked edit, we could get score prep done. That all got sent over to the orchestra in Prague. We hopped on what is basically a high-end Zoom call and ran the session here from Sydney in Australia with the orchestra in Prague. Came back into the studio the next morning. Sitting in our inbox was a link with 1,200 audio files in it.
1,200 audio files.
That Nick had to sift through.
I had the joy and pleasure of sifting through, which was basically just collating the takes that I liked and then deciding what combinations of microphones we'd use. Relied heavily on the Decker tree, left, center, and right. We had like a pair of stereo outrigger mics and then some overheads for each section. I avoided using any specific instrument mics just because we wanted it to sound really big and really wet, and the orchestra kind of levels themselves beautifully. It sounds really grand, and I think using those drier, more direct mics just wasn't really necessary. I guess the other thing we did is we built a session with all the orchestral recordings. Sort of got the blends of instrument groups and microphones that we liked, and then we bounced that into different stems that we imported into this main project. Just to make it easier to manage, honestly, to keep CPU lower.
We'll play some of the stems down. All these are from a separate session. We just pulled a very clean mix, basically just with the balance we wanted, because we knew we were going to process them in here. Bounced each instrument group out as a stereo track, pulled it into this session. So the brass you're hearing here, it's a stereo bounce, but it's about 8 different microphones.
So I guess in terms of processing, you know, we're working with an orchestra. We're not really mixing things in a particularly orchestral way. You know, there's a bunch of compression. We're using a bit of sort of like a tube saturation emulation just to excite, you know, mostly the higher frequencies. We're using a little bit of fresh air just to get things to poke out. You know, strings, a little bit of a widener. We use Waves S1 a lot for sort of widening things. But otherwise, you know, it just came in sounding really good and really exciting already.
Open up Gossamer. What's that doing?
We do have Gossamer.
It's a cool plugin. This is made by a guy in Sydney. Oh, can't use the reverb on that. You hear that hard mute there. We wanted to cut everything to make room for that meteor hit because it's a huge sound design moment. We've just cut everything, so it's exactly how we want it to.
Let's listen. I guess the sound design aspect, you know, we really did try to make room for the sound design. You can see we're even just dipping a bunch of things, you know, dynamic EQs, obviously Q3, amazing thing to use. Because sound design had a lot of, you know, there are these sort of sonic booms, there are meteor noises, there's a lot of truck engines, there's a lot of roaring, there's a lot of thudding kind of footsteps. So really everything from the super low frequencies up to 250, 300, you're trying to be mindful of.
Yeah, overall across the whole track, we kept it pretty easy on the low end. And there were earlier versions of the track where we had a bunch of subs and big bass things running through it. And it sounded really great when we just were playing the track down. Then as soon as we got the sound design in it, it's just chaos. So there's a lot of stuff cut from the lows in the music to leave room for all that sound design.
Another part of the instrument bus is the guitars here. There's a bunch of guitars that we recorded and played in. This bus
Nick recorded and played in.
This bus is called Dragon Force. It's you know, Dragon Force inspired classic, you know, three-way guitar harmony, or guitarmony as we like to call it. And that was all done with Neural DSP archetype. I really love Neural. I love their software amps. I love picking amps. I love the pedals. I love the noise gate. I like being able to choose what microphone I'm using and the distance to the cone of the speaker and how off axis it is. So that's all Neural. It's the lower harmony, here's the middle harmony. It's the higher harmony. And all together. That's accompanied by just some more guitars here, just chugging along. Which, same thing, it's played in on archetype. Then I'm actually running it through a second amp. The bus itself, you know, it's getting some compression. It's going to a pull tech, you know, just to thicken it up a little bit. I play reverb. Obviously, the whole thing is pretty wet and massive. But those are the main features of the instrument bus, really, aside from the orchestra, yeah.
All right, so above the instrument bus, there's the spots bus. Part of the brief for this was, in the picture, there's all these vehicles, and each vehicle is themed to a country that's in the Rugby World Cup. So you've got, you know, this big kind of royal-looking carriage gazebo for the UK.
I'll play it down.
Yeah. Part of the brief was they want these melodic ideas on an instrument from the corresponding country. Next up, you have this Japanese walking mech with this guy on top of it playing taiko drums. There's a French train, the woman holding a baguette. It's the stock Logic accordion.
Sounds great.
It sounds great.
Some tape delay on it. As you can see on the video, there is a giant guitar. Which I grabbed an acoustic guitar and I held it up to the microphone on the desk and played a line, really.
It was probably this mic.
I
And
think
the room
it
was
was
full
this
of
mic.
people and everyone was like, can we have some flamenco guitar there? And we liked it, so we've just kept it in. But
Yep.
that was very early stage.
Pro Art, use this reverb heaps on this. Obviously, Fab Filter stuff is just amazing. You know, you just want things that represent each country, and obviously, when they're scored to picture really closely, you're never going to get something serendipitously happening on beat one.
Very occasionally.
Or even a beat. So there's always a little bit of massaging and finding these melodic lines that are pretty flexible with where in the bar they start and finish.
There's also on this, slightly earlier on the Meteor, there's this cool guitar spot.
Let's have a look at what's happening here. There's some pan automation. Basically, as is happening on video, we go from left to right.
You can also see on the actual bus there, it's going through pedal board. I think it's like a rat-style distortion on
like a
that.
rat clone.
That's going into an echo. And you can see if you look at the transient's quite short, the echo is really loud in the mix. So that pan automation is kind of grabbing the tail of the echo, pulling mostly it's just echo that's getting pulled from left to right.
Yeah.
Sounds kind of cool.
There are heaps of vocals in this. Most of them are non-lyrical. The ones that are lyrics, the idea was to have not to have them too intelligible.
We're walking a bit of a fine line. The vocals obviously needed to be a really big part of the track, but they didn't want them to be fully lyrical, but also obviously not just like mumbo jumbo vowel noises. So we kind of have a couple approaches. So there's some big woes up top, and then we kind of got onto this rah-rah idea, which if you're not in Australia, rah-rah is kind of Aussie slang for rugby. So we had the choir chanting these big rah-rah chants.
Why don't we listen to those?
Yeah.
So this is the first sort of lyrical thing we hear with the vocals, and it does sound really awesome. Why don't we have a listen?
There's a slight unhinged quality to it, which we really liked, and we were pushing for. A lot of actually the problems we ran into with recording these great singers that we record all the time was they sounded too good. And because the ad is so over the top, it's really loud, bombastic, huge, the scale's epic. We were often having to find ways of like, how do we make the sound a little more unhinged? And maybe we could have a listen to Hugh as well above that. We weren't looking for a perfectly controlled classical performance. We wanted this raucous, boisterous kind of stadium chant sound to it.
Also later on, we have some rah-rahs where we have a bunch of people sounding awesome. But it was almost too accurate. So then we actually recorded, I think just you and I and a couple of the people that work here that are not vocational singers.
Yeah, we
by
needed
any means.
some crap vocalists on it to
Some
make
crap vocals.
make it sound more like literally a crowd in a stadium.
Yeah. And so vocals do get pretty busy by the end. We solo the buses.
Bit of
There's
glue
some
compression.
There's some kind of big reverbs that are fairly wet. And we're just keeping the lows at bay, really. That's kind of what's happening. Some of the woes we're using Waves S1 just to make it a little bit wider.
Most of the processing, I guess, Decapitator and stuff was roughing it up. That was the biggest challenge with this is, the singers are so great. How do we make them sound
Totally.
crazier, a bit rougher? So that's kind of what the saturation's doing.
Yeah, just a little bit, run it through, the kind of Neve emulation style.
Something that's fun about this job is there's not a lot of stylistic rules we had to follow, and definitely not mixing it like an orchestral score, not really mixing it like a rock track, sort of just going nuts. You can see here, there's this stuff like this huge filter sweep over the instrument bus. Maybe we'll play that down.
Yeah.
So that's on Waves 1 knob. I mean, we could have done something, do it very transparently using an EQ. Maybe kind of reached for the filter because everything about this spot was just crazy character, color. So it's nice using a filter that does give it a bit of color. Get that.
We've kept the resonance on 0 just because I do find the resonance is pretty gnarly.
It's naughty doing a little DJ mix.
So once we had all the parts in, I mean, it was sounding pretty good. A bunch of the automation was done on the individual buses, like the instrument bus has most of it, and the spots bus, obviously. So then it was just on the mixed bus, you know? What are we going to put to finish it? And I guess in line with everything being over the top and being super dramatic, that was kind of the way. So if we actually just look at what's on the mix bus, we've got some dynamic EQs here just to, you know, dip certain things that are, I mean, the usual suspects, right? 2.5 to 3, around 200 for the mud. Using a pull tech here, really, you know, mostly just for color, mostly on the low end. Oxford inflator, a great thing. Odd order harmonics, just really exciting them. It's cranked. We love it. It makes a big difference. We're using a little bit of fresh air, a great free plug-in. Really subtly, again, add excitement, you know, especially to the sort of, you know, high to very high frequency. And then it's getting punched with an old school limiter, Waves L3. If I actually take a bunch of that stuff off on the mix bus and we just listen to, you know, let's listen to something near the end that's pretty loud. Now if I turn everything back on, let's have a listen. Once that was done, that's kind of the mix. It gets sent to the amazing sound designers that we worked with on this in the building.
Fun job. Ridiculous job.
Ridiculous job.
Definitely the most channels we've ever had in a session. The one we're in right now, we've done some serious housekeeping.
All in all, great stuff.
Great stuff.
Love it.